Good evening. How are you? It's Jules Wyman here. The obligatory hair fiddle as I realise the odd angles of things and how weird my hair looks out of shape at this moment in time. A little bit of vanity there for you. A little bit of secret vanity I'll let you in on. Well, if you've watched any of these live before, you will know there is no secret about how much I hair fiddle when things go live. And especially at the moment, because honestly it's getting cut tomorrow. I even contemplated shaving it all off this evening just because of how much there is. And if you don't know that I waffle for the first few moments of the confidence conversation, there is a reason. It's not just because I'm slightly barking, but it's also because Facebook takes a little while to let you know that I've gone live, and that's why I give a little bit of time to give you the opportunity to join and know that we've gone live. So as I can see that people are joining, do say hi. That's what we do at the confidence conversation. It's lovely to have as you join. Just jot down and say hi. If you don't want to join in the conversation much more after that, then that is absolutely fine. But as the lovely Shelley has just shown, it's very easy to just go, hi Jules, and that is exactly what I do it for, so that I can give you a shout out, because it's always nice to welcome people and say hi. It's a little bit, I do see it as a little bit like welcoming you into my home. Hey Rachel, and I am working from home this evening, so it is like welcoming you into my home and having you as part of my party, my guests this evening. But I'm afraid you have to get your own tea or your own drink. I haven't quite been able to make that an order through the internet. Hey Jill, how lovely to have you here, and Katie as well. This is going to be interesting, trying to like all of those. I apologise now if I don't get to like your comments as they come up. Facebook has changed the way that they do it, which means I have to actually now open up your comment rather than just liking on the side, which makes it a little bit more time consuming and will make the camera wobble a little bit because somebody left the tripod at the office again. So welcome to those of you that are joining. Please do make sure that you like and follow the page as well. And believe it or not, I know the numbers have gone a little bit awry somewhere, but this is apparently the 98th episode of the confidence conversation, which started off as confidence question time and became confidence conversation through your feedback. And what's fascinating with that is that I wrote ages ago, I planned out based on some conversations that I was having with people at the time, clients and colleagues and friends as well, and family members. So I did about 2 months worth of mapping out ideas for the confidence conversation. And as it happens, I don't know whether it's synchronicity or what, but this evening's conversation is all about trust. And interestingly enough, I've spent, I would say, at least half of my working day today talking about making decisions, being indecisive, and how doubt can creep in. And what I find fascinating is that I haven't got my notes that I wrote for this session with me. I came home earlier than intended to get a few things done, and it was only about half an hour or so ago that I realised I didn't have these notes, and I thought, well, what a beautiful example of trust, is that I'm going to trust that the conversation that we have this evening gives you what you need, and that you will ask the questions that you need to get answers for, or at least a conversation can be had around them. And so if you've not joined us before, the invitation is to please type in your thoughts, your questions at any point during the conversation. Please don't feel that you have to wait. You have my full permission to get those thumbs working or those fingers typing at any point throughout this conversation this evening, because this is about you. And my intent behind doing these live videos every week is to plant some seeds for you, to give you the opportunity to start thinking about things in a different way, to maybe challenge some of the perspectives that you have in order to help you make some shifts in your life, and to answer any questions about, I would say any topic, but let's face it, comes to geography, history and sport, I'm not that great at Trivial Pursuits, I'm afraid. Used to be great on the entertainment, but as soon as I don't really watch TV that much anymore, that's even slipping as well. But anything on personal self, on personal development, on your own self-growth, self-awareness, I hate the phrase, but I'm going to use it, how to be a better version of you or the best version of you. I don't like it because I don't believe that that's a truth. I don't believe that the version of you that there is right now is wrong or inadequate in any way, shape or form. But anyway, that's another topic. So yeah, please make sure that you feel free and to join in the conversation at any point. And remember that you can also do that with, hey Sharon, that's perfectly timed as well. And please remember to that you can like at any point or send the hearts as well. And do that when things that I'm sharing with you, if they make sense, or if they resonate with you in some way, shape or form. And equally, if something doesn't resonate with you or it doesn't make sense, rather than doing the sad face or the angry face, I'm not, my ego's not that fragile that I'm worried about people doing those emojis. It's just that I would rather have a conversation and see if we can work out where you are in that process and work out if there's a different way of me explaining it. Because I know that I get, I suppose I can get caught into a habitual way of explaining something. So it might be that you can set me a wonderful challenge of, actually, I don't understand X, Y, or Z. Thank you for the thumbs up, whoever that was. I didn't quite see. But that gives me the opportunity then to be able to challenge myself and explain it in another way for you. There was lots of hearts and thumbs going at that point. So thank you, whoever that was. And I'm assuming that what I've just said makes sense. Hi, Laura. I don't know why I went a bit high pitched then. Hi, Laura. And yeah, I think that's all kind of like the housekeeping. Oh, and remember that you can share this video. Invite your friends to it. You can share it now if you wanted to, the same way that you would do with any post on Facebook. There's a share button and you can share it straight to your page, or you can invite by tagging people, the same way you would do with anything on Facebook. Tag some friends in it if you know that there are friends that this information would be of value to them. So I did scribble down some notes, but I know that they're not the notes that I had when I originally planned this. But I think that I'm going to just start right off the bat with trust and asking a question that I love to ask people and do very often ask myself as well. And that is, how much do you trust yourself? It used to be my opening question with every new client that I worked with, which was, how much do you trust yourself? And I'm interested to know, if you were going to do it on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is the top, where would you put yourself? Or if it's not a case of doing that, maybe it's a case of noticing what comes up when you start to ask, how much do you trust yourself? Because in my experience, and as I say, feel free to type away any thoughts on this as it comes up. My experience is that very often when I talk to people about this, and I do ask them this question, that they may give an answer, 7 out of 10, or they may say, well, yeah, quite a lot actually. And then quite often after that, there will be a, well, it depends on, what situation are you talking about, or where would it be that I'd need to trust myself? And there then follows all of these rules and contextual understandings as to what is going on, what is it that would need to be in place in order for me to be able to trust myself. And the reason I'm jumping straight in with trust, by the way, I didn't explain this, is that in my world, the opposite of trust is doubt. And so many of us get caught up in doubting ourselves, whether that is it stops us from being decisive, whether it stops us from taking actions. We doubt ourselves as to whether to speak out in a meeting, share our thoughts, share an idea, make a challenge. And that, interestingly, that's something that I hear a lot from people. Excuse me. I hear a lot from people about in the working environment, how often they doubt themselves to speak out, and they think, do you know what, I need to question that. I really should be questioning that. And they doubt themselves so much. Oh no, that would be stupid. They must have thought of that because they're senior than me, or they've got more information than me, or that seems like a really naive thing to think. And then either in the same meeting or a little bit later, quite often they'll notice that somebody else says, oh, well, hang on a second, we didn't think about blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, well, I did 3 weeks ago, and I just didn't say it because I doubted myself. And it happens so often. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to what expectations we have of ourselves, but also of the situation. So let's stick with the speaking out in a meeting scenario. If I'm doubting myself to share my idea, and I used to do this all the time. In when I worked in theatre, I was a deputy stage manager, and I loved the role of being the deputy stage manager because it meant that you sat in the rehearsal room. So there would usually be me, and then the director would be next to me, and then you're sat watching the actors rehearse, whatever that may be. And my job was to make notes of where they moved and prompt them if required. And it's the liaison officer between the rehearsal room and the other technical departments. And quite often I was very insecure, if you don't know my background, very insecure and not very comfortable with my own voice, didn't think I was particularly intelligent. And so often I would have an idea about something, but I wouldn't say anything, not in the rehearsal room. And it would only be when we have been down to maybe go on a coffee break. Hi, Elizabeth. Maybe on a coffee break or cigarette break, as it was for me at that point. Or maybe it was a case of if I was having a coffee break and it would be me and maybe one of the actors, maybe two of the actors. And if it was small enough group, basically, and I felt that I could put my idea forward and it wouldn't really matter if only those one or two people heard it, then I would. And so often they would go back into the rehearsal room to the director and say, oh, Jules has just had this idea, or Jules just thought about da-da-da-da-da. And I would be like, oh my gosh, no, how could you say that? And it didn't matter whether the idea was right or taken on board or what, but it was listened to, and you know, it sometimes it played out and sometimes it didn't. But that wasn't the key point with it. And over time, and especially towards the end of my career in theatre, I gained a bit more confidence because I was with the same director a lot of the time, that I believed that he would listen to me. And so therefore, quite often actually he would say, what do you think? And I'd be like, if there's any mileage in, that used to be my kind of get out line, if there's any mileage in, or is there any mileage in doing it, you know, I don't know whether this is going to look stupid, but how about, so I would start to give my ideas, but I hadn't learnt then the power of language, and by pre-framing it that way I wasn't doing myself any favours. And that's a big part of this. Let me know if this is making sense or if this resonates with you, by the way. Because sometimes I do forget, you know, I'm now talking 15 years ago, that since I left the theatre, so it's 25 years ago, my gosh, how much time has flown since I started, and I forget sometimes just how much has changed in those last 15 years for myself. And now if it's appropriate, I have no problem with putting my idea forward and stating my viewpoint, even if it is stupid, even if it is wrong, even if it's laughed out of the room. I just don't have an issue with that so much anymore, because it's an opinion. It's not. It doesn't make me who I am or not. That makes sense. Rachel says, doubt. I do this daily. Ooh, press the wrong button. Flipping it over to trust allows me to empower myself, and I used it lately to apply for some responsibility that I wanted to take on. I was offered the role and was so pleased. I put my trust in me, that I accepted, and felt proud to take that leap out of my comfort zone. Rachel, that's awesome news. Congratulations. Absolutely congratulations. And I think that one of the questions I've probably shared with you before, and if I haven't, then how dare me, slap me over the hand for not sharing it with you before, but I would love to share it with everybody actually, and it's a question that initially I used to use so much for myself, to start challenging that doubt, which was along the lines of, how could I trust myself even more today? Or how could I trust myself even more right now? And even if I didn't have the answer, and even if I didn't know what that looked like, or how on earth I was going to muster up some illusory trust, whatever that may be, is that it won by saying trust myself even more. I was already saying to myself, well, I already trust myself, so therefore I can do something. And it got my brain thinking, okay, well, what else could I do? And I didn't have to magic up the answer immediately. And I think so much of this trust goes back to those expectations. What is the outcome that we're expecting? If I'm expecting in that meeting, if I share my idea, if I'm expecting everyone to go, oh, you're amazing, you're the best thing since sliced bread, we must take the idea and run with it, and it's going to make us all a millionaire, and everything is just phenomenal, then I'm kind of kidding myself, and that's a very high expectation. Equally, I could have the expectation that everyone's going to either ignore me, laugh me out of the room, and neither of those expectations really are helpful. But when we can learn to put those expectations to one side and say, do you know what, I'm going to share this idea or ask this question. It's interesting, actually. I remember saying to a very, very senior person within an organisation a load of thoughts and ideas. We were at a conference, and all we had was our first name, so we had no idea what the other person did, and I actually really liked that. And I was chatting away to him, really nice guy, chatting away, giving some ideas, and he'd asked me about the organisation and what I thought, and I was candid and said, well, this, wasn't rude, just he asked my opinion, so I gave it to him. And he employed me not only as his coach, but also, and this was a very sceptical personal development guy as well, didn't really buy into personal development, but he also employed me for other members of his team, and also brought me in to do some work with the directorates that they had at that time as well, because he said that I was candid and just gave those ideas. And he said, because I didn't know the organisation, I was able to have a different perspective. And that's one of the beauties of this role as a coach, is having an outsider's view. Looking in can be very helpful at times. And I didn't expect him to take up my ideas. I didn't expect him to agree with my ideas. He just asked me my ideas, so I told him my ideas. I trusted myself to be able to communicate, but didn't have a tight grip on having to get it right or be right. Does that make sense? Shelley says, I was exactly the same as you're describing in my life. But as I've grown in confidence, I've found that self-doubt becomes less and less. And it is true, Shelley, I agree with you. And in fact, let me do that. It's so important for us to recognise that there isn't a switch that we can flick overnight and everything changes. This is a step-by-step process, and it's one that can be developed. And the more that we can challenge our expectations on things, in this instance, the more we can ask ourselves, okay, you can ask yourself a question such as, what would it be like for me to trust myself in this situation? I wonder what it would be like for me to trust myself going into a social situation. I went to meet a friend the other night, and we were meeting in a bar. And as I was walking up to the bar, I thought, wow, this is hilarious. How far have I come? Not only am I about to walk into a pub on my own to meet somebody that I haven't checked is there yet, that I'm just going to go there and order my drink if they're not there. But I was also in my scruffs and I wasn't bothered. And it was like, wow, how much have things changed, that I hadn't been all, everything all coiffured. And I probably would have either phoned them beforehand, and if they weren't, or text them, and if they weren't in the pub, I would have waited outside for them. And there's no way on this planet that I would have gone into a pub on my own to look for the person, because if they weren't there, the shame, how could I deal with that? But I now trust myself that it's okay. And a lot of that was about trusting myself. What would that be like to trust myself to walk into a social situation on my own and be okay? What could that look like? What could that feel like? What would that sound like for me? And yeah, that's where I'm at with that. So what are your thoughts or questions about? Thank you for the thumbs up. I can't see who that is, but just see the thumbs popping up. What are your thoughts or questions on trust or self-doubt? Drinking my tea before it gets cold. There's a few other things, whilst you may or may not be typing, that I did scribble down as a reminder that, it's interesting, we tend to trust strangers a little bit more than we trust those close to us at times. Because if you think about it, we trust strangers to stay on their side of the road when we're driving, or we trust train drivers to do their job, the signal people to do their job. We trust pilots in the similar way. There's so many different ways that we hand over our trust on a day-by-day basis. So I think that more of us are trusting than we give ourselves credit for. It's just when it comes down to our personal trust and the trusting of making a decision, or the trusting of speaking out, or whatever it may be, that's when something else kicks in. And one of the things that somebody shared with me years ago that I really loved is about the word doubt. And the word doubt has gone through a couple of changes linguistically, spelling-wise. It used to be spelled D-O-U-B-T. Then at some point they were like, we don't sound the B, so let's get rid of it. So it was D-O-U-T. And then I can't remember the exact reason or the origins behind it, but there was a reason for putting the B back in, which was around reminding people where the word comes from. Because the word, if you think about in the English language, I don't know about any other languages, but the word doubt, D-O-U-B-T, D-O-U-B, there's, I think, only a couple of other words that begin with that, and double is one of them. And by putting the B back into doubt, is that what they were looking to do was to remind the brain that doubting means that you're in two minds. There's two minds. Double. Doubt. So for me, a practice that I do is, if I ever notice that I'm doubting in some way, shape or form, is I look at what those two minds are saying. What are they saying? What's the mind one saying? Or, I have to get it right, otherwise I can't speak out. What's mind two is saying, I can't think of something. Mind two is saying, what if everybody laughs at me? So if I'm dancing between those two things, then that's not going to be helpful. But at least initially I can hear what the doubting is, what are the two options. And from that place, I then start to work out for myself, okay, well, what's helpful thinking? what's constructive thinking, what's supportive thinking, and I start dropping those things into play and notice what happens to those two things. And usually at some point they either become one, they either unify or they disappear. And sometimes within the unification of them, actually a second thing happens, which is I start to look at the balance where trust is concerned. So it's about remembering that if we're doubting, it's that we have those two things, but usually those two things are in conflict. And by having those two things in conflict, we're only going to create internal turmoil and discomfort for ourselves. So if we can find a level of understanding what both of those sides are looking for and get clarification with that, and then be able to trust ourselves from that point, it makes it all a very different process. Does that make sense? Let me know if that makes sense. And I'll just have a little squiggle and see if there is anything else that the other thing that I wanted to share as an insight, really, there are some thumbs going up, so I'm assuming it's making sense. The final thing really that I would like to offer around trust, and as I say, the reason I'm speaking about trust is because I believe that's the opposite of doubt. So if you notice that you're doubting or questioning or you're indecisive, then start to look for trust too. And you can use that question that I mentioned at the beginning, which is, how can I trust myself even more right now? And it's not a question that you have to come up with the answer straight away. The moment you start thinking about it, your brain is going to come up with some information. But trust is also based in belief. And it's interesting that very often we don't have clarity for ourselves as to what we believe about situations. And I don't mean surface level belief, oh, they're going to laugh at me. But I mean digging down with, well, okay, well, what does that mean about me? And what would that mean about me? And what would that mean about me? And digging down further and further so you can get clarification around those beliefs that you've got that could stop you. They could be blockers, basically, for you accessing your trust. They could be getting in the way. And those beliefs, again, come back to those expectations, because if you're expecting, I trust somebody and therefore I expect them to be reliable, have I communicated that expectation? Have I clearly stated that these are my expectations with that? Or am I just expecting them to know when in fact that may not be helpful either? So there's a lot of layers with trust, and there's a lot of, I can understand why people are indecisive, why people have a challenge with making decisions, why people worry about things over and over and question and doubt and all of those different aspects. I can absolutely understand how and why it can happen for people. I suppose my main offering for you this evening is to think about that it doesn't have to be that way. It may be the way that you've done it in the past. It may be what you've known for decades, but it doesn't have to be that way. And the more that you can give your attention to trust and the possibility of trust and how you could develop your own self-trust, then that can help you, give you a different experience in relation to moving forward. And it is about remembering that, is about remembering it's not about getting it right. It's not about trusting yourself so that life will always be rosy, shiny, pinky, fluffy, perfect. Life happens, stuff happens, but it is about trusting yourself to know that you can find a way through, you can handle things, even if that's not in the most elegant, graceful way, you can do that. So I have trusted myself this evening to do this confidence conversation without the notes that I created and have so diligently left in the office. So what's your takeaway? What's your takeaway from this evening? Type away, let me know. Or what further questions? Yeah, what further questions do you have? Or what would you like to know more about? Whether that is for this particular call or whether that is for future calls, because would I recommend that the question you posed about trusting ourselves is used as a daily practice? Yeah, I would, Rachel. In fact, I wouldn't make it, this is my personal view, for me it's just about noticing whenever it comes up that I was doubting myself, is that I would then ask myself, okay, how could I trust myself even more right now? So if I was going for a job interview, okay, how could I trust myself even more right now? When I started doing this business and was doing radio interviews and obviously the TV interview with the BBC and various things like that, is rather than having that expectation of I had to get it right, my focus was, how can I trust myself to know that I've got the information that I need to be able to say or do what it is that they're going to ask me to do? How can I trust myself even more right now? So I didn't make it a daily mantra that I had to do every day in the shower. It was more a case of becoming aware of when I was doubting myself, hearing that, and then offering myself the question to then see what would come up from that. Does that make sense, Rachel? I hope so. Yeah. So any other thoughts, questions, or insights? And please remember that you are free to ask any questions to bring to the conversation. It doesn't mean, as Rachel's thumbs up, thank you. It doesn't mean that I have to say, oh, well, Rachel said da-da-da-da, or Shelley asked this. It doesn't mean it has to come in that way. But this is about you. This is about what your needs are, and me doing and offering you what I can to help you with where you're at. Now, if you are in York or in the York area, then and you are interested in coming to an event on the 3rd of March at 10 o'clock till 1 o'clock at the Novotel in York, which is on Fishergate, I think, then message me below with yes please. Just put yes please below, and I will send you the details of how you can come to that event for free. And it's about assertiveness and confidence. It's about assertiveness and confidence. So it'll be roughly a 2-hour session with some space for you to chat with people afterwards as well. So if that's something that appeals to you, it's about, I can't remember the title of it, left those notes in the office as well. I think the title of it is How to Be Assertive and Confident in Everyday Life. I think that's the title of it. You can tell I didn't write the title because I can't remember it. So if that's something that appeals to you and that you would like to come, then you can either put yes please below here. Even if you're watching it on the recording, it's on the 3rd of March. I recognise that for those of you who aren't in the UK, it's a bit of a long way to come for a 2-hour workshop. But it'll be myself and somebody else that's delivering that. So if that's something that appeals to you and you want to come along, then please do let me know. Put yes please and I will send you the details. So I think I've waffled enough to give you enough time to type. I think I've waffled enough to give you enough information for that event and around trust and doubt. So I really do hope that this evening has given you the opportunity to think about trust and doubt in maybe a different way, give you a slightly different perspective, and see what you can do from there. How can I edit? How can I trust myself more? I sometimes doubt my capabilities and can't find the resource to then trust myself. Yeah, you've run out of leaves, Sharon. There will be more. So Jill, back to what you're saying. I'm not sure what the EDT stands for. So the question I posed, and it's really important that you word it in this way: how can I trust myself even more right now? And you could play around with the question: how can I trust myself even more right now, even though I'm doubting my capabilities? How could I trust myself even more, even though I'm doubting my capabilities? Because it's not about coming up with the answer immediately, Jill. It's about giving your brain the opportunity to start finding that itself. And maybe that's something I can look at in another session and go a bit deeper with that one. So thank you for that, Jill. And Shakila has put, lovely Shakila, I didn't know that you were here. Hello, my lovely. I shall send you that information then, Shakila, no problem at all. So if you're watching on the recording, I haven't actually said hi to those of you who are watching on the recording, and you would also like that information then for that workshop, which is free on the 3rd of March, 10th to 10 o'clock even to 1 o'clock at the Novotel in York on Fishergate, but you will need to book a place. Then I would, I will send you the information. Rachel, I'll send that across to you. You'd like to come to any event, anytime. I'll do whatever I can to make sure I'm putting that across. And I look forward to catching up with you next week. So in the meantime, have a play around with trusting yourself. See what happens. It's not about having to have all the answers or run around the street naked. Can do if you wish. I wouldn't recommend it in the weather in the UK at the moment. But it is about trusting yourself within, and the more that you can look for that, actively look for that within yourself, the more you will be able to find it. So take care of yourself, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Bye bye.